On May 13, 2025, at 7:30 in the evening, a 17-year-old girl walked into a town center in Kent, England. She was carrying her 4-month-old daughter. That was the last time anyone saw either of them alive. 3 months later, authorities didn't believe she was still alive, but they still had no idea where she went. This is one of 5 mysteries from 2025 that remain completely unresolved, and in each one, something doesn't add up. Strood is a town in the borough of Medway in Kent. It's the kind of place where nothing unusual happens. Quiet streets, familiar shops, the sort of neighborhood where people know each other, where routines repeat day after day without interruption. On the evening of May 13, 2025, that routine was broken. Skye Conway was 17 years old. She was a young mother. Her daughter was 4 months old. They lived in the Rochester area, about 20 minutes from Strood Town Center. For reasons that remain unclear, Skye decided to walk into town that evening, with her baby, in a pram. Police would later confirm one thing. She was seen walking through Strood Town Center at approximately 7:30 p.m. She was pushing a pram. Both she and her daughter were visible. It was documented, on record. But that's where the record ends. When her mother realized Skye hadn't come home by 9 p.m., she began to worry. By 10 p.m., she called the police. Kent police launched an appeal. They released images of Skye. They asked the public for help. The media picked up the story. Social media exploded with theories. But there was one detail that investigators couldn't explain. Between 7:30 p.m. when Skye was last seen and the moment her mother called police, something happened that erased both her and her daughter from existence. Not metaphorically, literally. No further sightings, no CCTV footage, no phone records, nothing. 3 months later, in August 2025, Kent police made an unusual public statement. They said they no longer believed Skye was alive. They had searched extensively. They had appealed to the public. But they had nothing. No body, no evidence of foul play, no leads. But here's the question that haunted investigators. If they didn't believe she was alive, then what had happened to her? And how does a 17-year-old girl with a 4-month-old baby simply vanish from one of England's busiest town centers without a trace? Let's walk through what we know, moment by moment. 7:30 p.m., May 13, 2025. Skye Conway is seen walking through Strood Town Center. She's pushing a pram. She's moving toward the train station area. Multiple witnesses see her. This isn't speculation. This is recorded. 7:35 p.m., or roughly around this time, the trail becomes thin. There are no more confirmed sightings. No shop workers remember her entering their stores. No bus drivers confirm her boarding a bus. No train staff recall her purchasing a ticket. It's as if the town center simply swallowed her. Between 7:30 and whenever her mother called police, Skye and her daughter disappeared. No panic, no emergency call, no one screaming, no accident reported. Just nothing. What makes this disappearance different from others is the absence of everything. There's no body, there's no crime scene, there's no ransom demand, there's no evidence of violence, there's not even a clear motive. In most abduction cases, investigators have something to work with, a thread, a lead, a contradiction that points somewhere. Here, there was only silence. By mid-August, Kent police had officially concluded their active search. Detectives shifted focus. They still maintained a cold case file, but Skye Conway and her 4-month-old daughter had effectively disappeared from the public record, from official investigations, almost as if they had never existed at all. On July 28, 2025, a man was driving through the desert outside Searchlight, Nevada. Searchlight is about 60 miles south of Las Vegas. It's empty country, rock, sand, the kind of place where people go when they want to disappear. This man pulled off the road. He was walking across the desert floor when he saw something that made him stop. Piles. Dozens and dozens of piles, scattered across the ground like an installation art project. But these weren't rocks. They weren't debris. They were human remains. The man called the police. Authorities arrived. The Bureau of Land Management was contacted. Federal investigators took over. And what they discovered was something that no one had a good explanation for. Approximately 315 piles of cremated human remains spread across a remote section of BLM-managed land just outside Searchlight. These weren't a family's ashes scattered respectfully on public land. This was systematic. This was organized. Someone had transported over 300 containers of human cremains into the desert. Someone had dumped them, and someone had left them there. The question was, who? Authorities examined the site. They found no identifiable information on any of the remains. No names, no dates, no funeral home markings, no documentation whatsoever. It was as if whoever had dumped these ashes had made a deliberate effort to erase any trace of where they came from or who they had been. Federal investigators immediately suspected a commercial funeral home. Nevada law allows individuals to scatter cremated remains on public land, but commercial disposal of cremains is prohibited. Someone had broken that law on a massive scale. By October 2025, Palm mortuaries and cemeteries had recovered approximately 315 piles from the desert site. They announced a decision. They would inter all of the remains together in a cemetery crypt. The president of the company told reporters, "It's important to us to make sure that these people are not forgotten and not left." But that raised a new question. If these people are being memorialized, if they have been given a proper burial at last, then where did they come from? And why were they dumped in the desert in the first place? 315 people, 315 lives, cremated, transported, dumped like waste, and no one had any idea why. In Indian-administered Kashmir, in a region called Kulgam, there is a shallow stream. The water barely reaches a few feet deep. In March 2025, 2 brothers were pulled from this stream. Their names were Shaukat Ahmad Bajad and Riaz Ahmad Bajad. They were young men. They worked as laborers at a brick kiln. They were part of the Gujar community, a traditionally nomadic pastoral group that has struggled with marginalization in Kashmir for decades. On February 13, 2025, Shaukat and Riaz attended a wedding in a local village. They went with their cousin, Mukhtar Ahmad Awan. It was a celebration, a normal family event. What happened after that is where the story breaks. The 3 men went missing after the wedding. Their family searched frantically for a month. For 30 days, there was no word, no phone calls, no sightings, nothing. Then, in mid-March, the bodies of Shaukat and Riaz were recovered from the stream. But Mukhtar? He has never been found. He remains missing to this day. Police ruled the deaths as suicides, accidental drowning. The official narrative was straightforward. The young men had entered the water. They had drowned. Case closed. But the family had a different story. When the bodies were recovered and handed over to the family, relatives witnessed the condition of the remains. What they described was not consistent with drowning. One family member, Ghulam Nabi, told investigators, The devastation was not in the manner of a simple drowning. There was injury. There were boil-like marks. Another uncle, Muhammad Jilani, wept as he recounted what he had seen. The injuries on their bodies were not those of drowning. These were signs of trauma. The mother of the two brothers, Mima Begum, made a tearful plea. "My sons were innocent, laborers at a brick kiln. They had no enemies. They attended a wedding and never returned. We want justice for whoever used these marks to hurt my sons and murder them." Despite the family's pleas for an independent investigation, Kashmir police maintained their drowning narrative. A special committee was formed. Forensic reports were ordered. But by late 2025, no conclusive findings had been released. Mukhtar remained missing, and the 3 deaths, 2 confirmed, 1 vanished, remained officially unexplained. Sudiksha Konanki was 20 years old. She was a pre-medical student at the University of Pittsburgh. She was ambitious, intelligent, and everything a parent dreamed their child would become. She lived with her family in Chantilly, Virginia. In early March 2025, Sudiksha decided to go on a spring break trip. She traveled with 5 female friends to the Dominican Republic. They stayed at the Rio Republica Hotel in Punta Cana, a resort on Arena Gorda Beach, one of the most popular vacation destinations in the Caribbean. On March 6th, at around 3 a.m., Sudiksha and her friends were drinking at the hotel bar. Surveillance footage shows her in a white cover-up, laughing with friends, enjoying the night. She was having the time of her life. She was 20 years old. It was spring break. Around 4 a.m., the group decided to go to the beach. 5 women and 2 men walked toward the water. Sudiksha was among them. The beach was dark. The water was moving. 5 people returned from the beach. Sudiksha was not among them. When her friends realized she hadn't come back to her room, they searched. They called for her. They alerted hotel staff. No response. Dominican authorities launched a massive search. Divers, dogs, drones, helicopters. They searched the water. They searched the sand. They searched the surrounding areas. For weeks, they looked. But Sudiksha Konanki was never found. The official explanation was straightforward. Sudiksha had drowned. The last person to see her was an American man named Joshua Stephen Rebe. According to his account, they had been swept by a wave. He attempted to rescue her, but the sea was too strong. She became fatigued. She slipped away. She drowned. Rebe was detained by Dominican authorities. He cooperated fully. He provided multiple statements. He described the rescue attempt in detail. He said he was a trained lifeguard, but had only pool experience. He said he swallowed seawater. He said he held her as they came ashore. He said he lost sight of her as he reached the beach. Then he fell asleep. By March 18th, Sudiksha's parents, devastated and desperate, requested that Dominican authorities legally declare her dead, even though her body had never been found. They accepted the drowning narrative. They wanted closure. They wanted to grieve. But here's what investigators never resolved. The water at that beach was shallow, extremely shallow. The current, while strong, had swept away tourists before, but bodies had always been recovered. Sudiksha's was not. Her cover-up was found on a beach chair. There were no signs of violence. There was no evidence of foul play. Yet Sudiksha Konanki, a 20-year-old woman on her spring break, was gone, and the only explanation was an accident, a drowning, a tragedy. Ashley Elkins was 30 years old. She was the mother of 2 children. She lived in Warren, Michigan, and ran her own salon from her home. She was a working mother, independent. building a life for her kids. On December 31st, 2024, just 2 days before her disappearance, her ex-boyfriend, DeAndre Booker, came to her house. He knocked on the front door. He used a fake name to book a salon appointment. Ashley saw that it was him. She told everyone in the house to be quiet. He knocked again. Then he left. 2 days later, on January 2nd, 2025, at 8:30 in the morning, Ashley left her home. She was wearing a long black coat with fur around the hood, black leggings. She got in her car. She drove away from her children. She never came back. Her family didn't immediately panic. She was an adult. She could go where she wanted. But by 10 a.m., her mother, Monica, arrived at the house to find it empty. She tried to FaceTime her daughter. No answer. Hours passed. Then a text came through. Ashley said she was going to a beauty supply store. Her mother thought she might be okay. But then the phone was turned off. When it came back on, the last known location was at her ex-boyfriend's apartment in Roseville. That was the last any of her family would hear from Ashley Elkins. Police launched a missing persons investigation. They traced her phone. They tracked her car. On January 7th, they found her vehicle, a gray Chevy Malibu, parked a few miles from Booker's apartment. They searched the apartment. They found something that changed everything. DNA evidence, blood evidence, Ashley's blood, in the bathtub, in the drain, spattered on surfaces. There was also a bullet found in the drain, and a family earring. All of it Ashley's. On January 8th, Booker was arrested. He was questioned. He provided statements. Police immediately believed there was foul play. They believed Ashley had been murdered. But here was the problem. There was no body, no weapon, no eyewitnesses, no confession. During his arrest, Booker's search history was examined. Google searches included, "Is blood traceable?" "What to do while on the run?" "Fastest routes from Flint to Ohio." "How to beat a polygraph test." His behavior suggested guilt. His searches suggested deliberate concealment. But without a body, without physical proof of death, prosecutors faced a challenge. How do you prove someone is dead if you can't find the body? Investigators believed she had been transported to a landfill, the Pine Tree Acres landfill in Lenox Township. They tracked garbage trucks that had serviced Booker's apartment complex. Using GPS data, they narrowed down the location. They began an excavation. For a week, dozens of officers searched through tons of garbage. They looked for anything, any sign of Ashley Elkins, a piece of clothing, a bone, anything. They found nothing. By August 2025, Booker had been charged with lying to police and obstruction of justice. By January 2026, he had been bound over for trial for murder, despite no body ever being found. The case proceeded. The evidence was circumstantial, but it was substantial. Ashley Elkins remains missing. She has never been found. But in 2026, a court ruled that the case against her ex-boyfriend was strong enough to proceed to trial. A murder trial without a body, without eyewitnesses, without a murder weapon, just evidence, just suspicion, just the terrible certainty that she was gone. In each of these 5 cases, we have evidence, we have timelines, we have official explanations, but we don't have answers, not real ones, not ones that feel complete. For Sky Conway, the theory is this. She walked into Strood Town Center and was abducted by someone she knew or met. Perhaps she got into a car with someone. Perhaps she was lured away from the town center. The pram was perhaps left behind in a different location, or disposed of, or hidden. The theory requires an accomplice. The theory requires premeditation. It requires someone in that town center who was waiting for her. Except there's no evidence of that. No CCTV of a struggle. No car spotted near the town center. No witnesses reporting an abduction. Just a girl and her baby who were there, and then were not. For the Nevada ashes, the theory is this. A funeral home, operating illegally, had collected the remains of dozens or hundreds of clients over years. When their business was threatened, or when storage became impossible, they decided to dispose of the remains in the desert. A mass dumping of human ashes to hide the evidence of their neglect, their negligence, or their fraud. But if that's what happened, why hasn't anyone been charged? Why haven't investigators identified the funeral home? Why, months later, does the case remain open? For the Gujjar brothers, the theory is this. Police or paramilitary forces either killed the young men in custody, or the men were killed by someone with knowledge that authorities would cover it up. The torture marks on the bodies suggest this. The family's account suggests this. But official forensic reports have not confirmed this, and Mukhtar, the third man, remains missing. For Sudiksha Konanki, there are two theories. One, she drowned accidentally, a tragic, preventable accident. A young woman in the ocean at night, a wave, exhaustion, death. The other theory, she disappeared intentionally, or she was deliberately harmed, and the drowning narrative was the easiest explanation for authorities to accept. There is no evidence of foul play, but there is also no evidence that proves the drowning occurred. No eyewitness to her final moments, no body, just absence. And for Ashley Elkins, the theory is this. She was murdered by her ex-boyfriend. Evidence suggests this. His behavior suggests this. His searches suggest this. But without a body, without finding where her remains are, without a confession, the case exists in a liminal space. Guilt seems probable, but proof remains elusive.